The Eagles capped off a dominant season with a dominant Super Bowl win and aren't going away anytime soon. Philadelphia went 14-3 and rolled in the postseason before beating the Chiefs 40-22 to win another Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts was fantastic and likely changed the narrative around his career. Nick Sirianni is a Super Bowl champion coach. It changes a lot, and it's not going to get any easier to stop Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown. The offense was good. It'll stay good. The defense dominated, and that's still the expectation for the future, too. The present and the future for the Eagles is incredible. The roster is loaded, and that was very evident in 2024. 2024 was a magical season for the Eagles. Philadelphia only lost 3 games the whole season and only once after its Week 5 bye. It all started in Week 1 against the Packers in Brazil on a Friday. It was close, but the Eagles defense got the job done and really shut down Green Bay late, and Jordan Love got hurt on the last drive. It was the first Eagles Saquon Barkley sighting in the regular season, and he was great. He had a 100-yard game with 2 touchdowns. It turned out those were just normal performances for him. The next week, Philadelphia lost in a thriller to the Falcons. The Eagles trailed 15-10 entering the fourth quarter. Jalen Hurts had a rushing touchdown to lead, and Jake Elliott hit a field goal to make it 21-15 with 1:39 remaining. Kirk Cousins then found a game-winning touchdown with 34 seconds left to win 22-21. Week 3 was another wild fourth quarter. The Saints led the Eagles 3-0 entering the fourth. It ended 15-12 Eagles with 2 Saquon Barkley touchdowns. Chris Olave caught a touchdown pass from Derek Carr with 2:03 remaining, only for Barkley to score with 1:01 remaining. Week 4 was by far the worst game of the season for the Eagles. It was the only loss by more than 1 possession. The Buccaneers jumped out to a 24-0 lead and rolled to win 33-16. 2-2 was definitely a disappointing start for the Eagles, but after a bye week, Philadelphia only lost once for the rest of the year. The Eagles got a win over the Browns out of the bye, 20-16. Devontae Smith scored a 45-yard touchdown from Jalen Hurts with 7:54 remaining, and the defense didn't break. The next week was the Saquon Barkley return to New York, which was definitely hell for the Giants. He rushed for 176 yards and a touchdown as the Eagles beat the brakes off the Giants 28-3. Philadelphia ended up with a big win against the Bengals in Week 8. It was 37-17, but the majority of the game was close. It was tied 10-10 at halftime and tied at 17 until Jalen Hurts found Devontae Smith for a 45-yard touchdown with 2:43 remaining in the third quarter. Then the Eagles just ran away with it. Philadelphia beat the Jaguars 28-23 to move to 6-2. The Jaguars made it interesting late thanks to a Trevor Lawrence touchdown with 4:04 remaining, and then Jake Elliott missed a field goal, but Lawrence was picked off by Nakobe Dean with 1:42 remaining. The Cowboys got obliterated 34-6 in Week 10. Dallas had a really rough time against the Eagles in 2024. Cooper Rush only had 45 yards passing and an interception. Likely the most impressive stretch for the Eagles was Week 11 to Week 13, all against teams that made the divisional round. The Eagles beat Washington in Week 11. Washington led 10-6 headed to the fourth quarter. Philadelphia then rattled off 3 straight rushing touchdowns. Jalen Hurts had 1 and Saquon Barkley had 2. Washington scored to make it 26-18, but it was too late. It was followed up with a 37-20 win against the Rams. The Eagles jumped out to a 20-7 lead 11 seconds into the third quarter. The Rams couldn't recover and couldn't stop Saquon Barkley, who rushed for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Ravens in Week 13 might have been the biggest test for the Eagles during the regular season. 2 misses by Justin Tucker really helped, but the Eagles defense held the Ravens to 19 points, including a Lamar Jackson touchdown pass to Isaiah Likely with 3 seconds left when it was already over. The Eagles picked up an impressive 24-19 victory. Then Philadelphia beat the Panthers 22-16. It wasn't quite the layup as expected. The Eagles were down 16-14, but Jalen Hurts found Grant Calcaterra for a 4-yard touchdown with 13:45 to go in the fourth quarter, and Philadelphia held on to win. The Eagles Eagles moved to 12-2 the next week with a 27-13 win against the Steelers as Jalen Hurts passed for 2 touchdowns and rushed for 1. The only game the Eagles lost after September was against Washington on December 22nd. Jalen Hurts got injured and Kenny Pickett replaced him. Jaden Daniels torched the Eagles defense for 5 passing touchdowns. Despite forcing 5 turnovers, Philadelphia lost to end a 10-game winning streak. Pickett had to start the next week and the Eagles massacred the Cowboys 41-7. Saquon Barkley had 167 yards to pass 2,000 yards on the season. Tanner McKee started week 18 for the Eagles as some starters sat. He threw 2 touchdowns to win 20-13 against the Giants. Philadelphia finished the regular season 14-3, won the NFC East, and got the number 2 seed in the NFC. There were high expectations for the Eagles going into the postseason, but it would have been crazy to expect Philadelphia to be as dominant as it was. The Eagles were dominant in the postseason en route to winning Super Bowl 59. Philadelphia faced the Packers in the wild card, a rematch from when the Eagles won 34-29 in week 1. It was a mess for Green Bay. Keyshawn Nixon fumbled the opening kickoff, and Jordan Love threw 3 picks. The Eagles jumped out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter. That included a Jalen Hurts touchdown pass to Jahan Dotson after the Nixon turnover. The Packers closed the gap in the fourth quarter with a Josh Jacobs punch-in, but 2 Jake Elliott field goals followed to make it a 22-10 victory for Philadelphia. The scoreboard was close, and Green Bay had a chance, but the Eagles controlled the game. Jalen Hurts passed for 2 touchdowns, and Saquon Barkley rushed for 119 yards. The divisional round was by far the closest postseason game for the Eagles, and it came in the snow against the Rams. It was tight. The Rams forced a safety and were only down 1 going into the 4th. Jake Elliott drilled 2 field goals, but the Rams defense was bending, not breaking. It was only 22-15, but then Saquon Barkley rushed for a 78-yard touchdown with 4:36 remaining. It was the first play of the drive after a Rams 3-and-out. It wasn't over yet. Matthew Stafford threw a touchdown to Cody Parkinson with 2:48 remaining to make it 28-22, and then forced a punt. The Rams got down to the Philadelphia 13, but Jalen Carter got a big sack, and the Rams turned it over on downs with 31 seconds left. Saquon Barkley was a big factor. He rushed for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then the NFC Championship was the third matchup between Washington and Philadelphia. It wasn't pretty. The Eagles won 55-23. It was mostly closer than the score shows. It was 34-23 after 3 quarters, and then the Eagles blew the doors open. Saquon Barkley once again was unstoppable with 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts played well, throwing for 246 yards and a touchdown, and he rushed for 3 touchdowns. The Eagles earned a second chance at the Chiefs at Super Bowl 59 after losing Super Bowl 57 to the Chiefs 38-35. The Chiefs won again the next year and had a chance at a three-peat, but the Eagles didn't allow it. It wasn't even close. The Eagles absolutely dominated and won 40-22. The Chiefs made the score look a lot better and the stat sheet less depressing late. Patrick Mahomes threw 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes, but before then it was 40-6 for Philadelphia. The Eagles forced 3 turnovers, including a Cooper DeJean pick 6. Jalen Hurts was the Super Bowl MVP after throwing for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and rushed for 72 yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs had a really hard time trying to stop Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. That was an issue no matter who the Eagles were playing all season, and nobody quite figured it out. The Eagles' offense was hard to stop in 2024. Saquon Barkley was a big reason why. He rushed 345 times for 2,005 yards and 13 touchdowns. It would have been tough, but he did have a chance to break the season rushing record held by Eric Dickerson at 2,105 yards in 1984. Barkley sat out and didn't play Week 18. Jalen Hurts not only threw for 2,903 yards, 18 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions while completing 68.7% of his passes, but he also rushed for 630 yards and 7 touchdowns. A.J. Brown was the top passing target with 1,079 yards and 7 touchdowns on 67 receptions. Devontae Smith had 68 receptions for 833 yards and 8 touchdowns. Dallas Goedert caught 42 passes for 496 yards yards and 2 touchdowns. Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean flew around on defense. Bond had 151 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, and 5 forced fumbles. Dean had 128 tackles, 3 sacks, and 9 tackles for loss. He unfortunately suffered a knee injury in the wild card and missed the rest of the postseason. Josh Sweat led the Eagles with 8 sacks and added 9 tackles for loss. Nolan Smith had 6.5 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. Jalen Carter had 12 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. CJ Gardner-Johnson had 6 interceptions and 12 passes defended. Quinyon Mitchell was just locked down and had 12 passes defended. Then Reed Blankenship had 4 interceptions. The offense and defense were both stacked. Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio had easy jobs as the coordinators under Nick Sirianni. It's impressive how fast the Eagles were able to rebuild a roster that won Super Bowl 52 when Doug Peterson was the head coach and Nick Foles had that unlikely run. Philadelphia just kept adding more talent and expect it to be much of the same. The Eagles have some very important free agents to keep around if Philadelphia wants to keep the band together for another Super Bowl run. A lot of the key guys are young and on contract for the future. The Eagles keep drafting well and will pick 32nd in April. The biggest free agent is Zach Bond, coming off of a breakout season. He signed a 1-year deal after 4 seasons with the Saints and was named a first-team All-Pro. He'll be expensive. Josh Sweat is up for a new deal. He was on a 3-year, $40 million deal that he agreed to in 2021. Mekhi Becton was on a 1-year deal, and the Eagles might want him to come back after he started 15 games. Milton Williams is a free agent and could command a good chunk of money. He had 5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss in 2024. Brandon Graham is an interesting free agent. He keeps signing 1-year deals, but at some point, he will retire. It'll be weird when he's not on the Eagles. It's been 15 years, and it's hard to see him not playing in Philadelphia. If it isn't a short return, retirement makes sense. What the Eagles will need in free agency in the draft will depend on who is lost from the bunch. There could be a needed edge rusher or linebacker, depending on how the cards unfold. Philadelphia has a projected $25 million in cap room, and it could be more, especially if Darius Slay or James Bradbury get cut. Philadelphia has 7 picks at the 2025 NFL Draft, including 3 in the 5th round. The Eagles already have to replace offensive coordinator after Kellen Moore left to be the Saints head coach. Every team loses pieces after this season, but winning a championship means losing more. Coordinators get head coaching opportunities, and successful players get paid. But the Eagles have already been through it before and returned to win another Super Bowl already. Howie Roseman knows exactly what he's doing. The Eagles will be back.